This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. It's episode 282 of the Craft Beer and Brewing Podcast. I'm Jamie Bogner, and I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, again for this episode. And sitting across from me are Shawn Bainbridge and Joran van Ginderachter. Did I get it
Perfect.
Close? Perfect? Oh, yes. I got a little practice trying to pronounce Flemish correctly earlier this year, obviously. And so we're at Halfway Crooks, and one of our beers of the year. And rather than doing this one remotely, I just decided to fly out to Atlanta to talk to you guys in person, partly selfishly, so I could also try to drink some lager and some Belgian-style beers while I'm here, which I did get to do a little bit yesterday. Just one. Maybe after the podcast, we can try a little bit more. Anyway, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us.
You're the ubiquity of Halfway Crooks lager hat and merchandise has spanned out further, I think, in the craft brewing world than the beer itself, since it's much easier to get merchandise out there. Anyway, interesting. Your approach to lager brewing is extraordinary, and of course, your approach to Belgian beer is rated as one of our best beers of 2022. And so we're going to talk about both of those things here because you get wonky about both. Before we do that, what if you could chill your beer with a more efficient chiller? The answer, G&D Chiller's new micro-channel condensers. G&D's micro-channel condensers are highly efficient in hotter regions, use a fraction of the refrigerant over traditional chillers, which provides less opportunity for leaks, along with lower global warming potential. G&D Chiller's engineers are committed to green technology design while developing a more energy-efficient chiller for the brewing industry. Contact G&D Chillers today at gdchillers.com. Also, you ready to brew like a pro? ProBrew has the equipment, systems, and technology to take your brewery to the next level. Check out www.probrew.com for info on patented ProCarb inline carbonation technology, ProFill rotary filling and seaming can fillers, the Alchemator inline alcohol separation system, 7 to 50 barrel brew houses, and more. ProBrew, a subsidiary of Technoblend, now a ProMonk brand, offers the craft beer industry innovative solutions to help you brew like a pro. Go to www.probrew.com for more info.
And we use a G&D chiller, and we love it. It keeps all of our lagers very cold.
I keep hearing that. There are a lot of G&D chillers out there in the world, and we appreciate their support and have appreciated their support for years and years, and appreciate their support. Again, they're back on board to support us next year and in 2023. So we're big G&D chiller fans. And pretty much everybody I talk to says the same thing. We love our G&D chillers. Yeah. So it's a fantastic partnership there. Well, let's talk about background. Give us Shawn, let's start with your background, brewing background, kind of arc through beer, and what led you here to start Halfway Crooks with Joran.
Yeah, I was a homebrewer here in Atlanta, Georgia. I started homebrewing when I was in college at Georgia Tech, and it was kind of an outlet for me. Apart from all the studies,
sure,
it was rather rigorous there. So it was a great thing to explore, kind of outside the engineering realm. And then I kind of started to realize I really enjoyed the control system process of brewing, and it kind of that part of the hobby at the time kind of took me to a lot of different places. I was, when Joran moved here from Belgium, he started 3 taverns, and I would kind of mess around over there a little bit too with building a pilot system for them, and they also hosted our homebrew club a couple times, which was really, really nice of them. And I was a part of a
wonky engineer turned brewer.
Exactly. Yeah.
Never heard that story before.
We had a homebrew club here called Final Gravity. And it was started by Bob Sandage, who was a former owner of the Wrecking Bar here in Atlanta. And Blake Tires was also part of the club. He's now Creature Comforts. There was a lot of great brewers that came out of that club, and it was kind of a technically kind of focused club.
Yeah. And of course, Neil Engelman, who we had in the bar in the podcast last week, worked at Wrecking Bar too. Was their head brewer. So it's a fun, tight community there. Yeah.
It was great. That's kind of how Joran and I met. We met at Brick Store Pub. Basically, kind of stemming from that beer like the beer industry here. Kind of met there in the basement, and kind of from there we were roommates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were roommates with Blake for a while too.
I was
weren't
actually
you?
roommates with Blake too. Yeah, the same house. It was kind of revolving. We had like a basement that was. It was probably illegally producing quite a lot of beer. We had we had barrels down there and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun.
What's your story, Joran?
Yeah, so I'm from Belgium. I grew up there, did brewing school there, graduated in 2008, and I part of brewing school was I did 4 months in internship at New Belgium in Colorado, and really fell in love with like American craft beer. Like was very surprised how it all worked and how different it was to Belgium, or the approaches at least.
Sure.
So yeah, went back to Belgium, started working in breweries over there, and basically I did the opposite and started home brewing with two of my friends from brewing school.
Huh.
So
Homebrewing is not as big a thing in Europe in general.
No, yeah. So again, like we started home brewing at Alex's house. I think I was brewing like big batches, like we designed like bigger kettles, like, and started making beer the way we wanted to make beer. 'Cause, Belgian breweries, it was more like constantly following same recipes, definitely in the bigger breweries.
Right.
So that was like an outlet for us that sort of led to starting our own brewery called Verzet. And I think in the meantime, it was still like itching to move out of the country and still come back to the US. And Brian Purcell at Three Taverns at the time wanted to start a Belgian style brewery, and reached out to Peter Boekhart, he's my uncle. And I think I was on a list of like a couple Belgian brewers, and eventually, long story short, I came over to Atlanta to help start Three Taverns. I took some time to fall in love with Atlanta, but I really like it here now. I met Shawn. Shawn showed me around the city. And yeah, so did Three Taverns. And eventually Shawn and I started talking about, again, doing something like different, like the laws were changing here as well, to like figure out how we could like, I don't know how to say it.
Like, yeah, the laws at the time were very restrictive. So
Right.
you
It was
have
very
to,
like production
Yes.
brewery focused, where you had to be at a certain scale really in order to even be able to make beer here. Wasn't favorable to taproom style breweries. Sure.
Yeah, they made you basically buy a tour, or you could go on a free tour, and you would have samples, and you couldn't sell beer directly to the consumer. So
yeah, that was definitely weird when you see all that.
Yeah, so these great American laws to protect the distributor,
Yes.
know, middlemen and all of this, and then also to protect, there's such a. I actually was interviewed by a writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer asking about that, because they were writing about all the terrible laws. So New Jersey has now enacted all of these awful laws.
I heard about that.
Which is absurd. But, when you have protectionism around liquor licenses and this idea that only a certain number of liquor, places serving alcohol would be safe for a community, and so you have to restrict those licenses, you end up with a whole bunch of weird effects like this that kind of cascade out and ultimately, negatively impact consumers in their own experience of these things, because people want to, they want to drink where people are making things. They want to connect with that. This is one of the reasons the craft beer is so powerful as a thing in America, because people, and it's the reason they go to farmers markets, because they want to buy from producers. You want to find that kind of connection. Anyway, I'm going to get off my soapbox on that. You were at the right place at the right time, and all of a sudden now in Georgia things were changing, and you could have a different kind of brewery business, one that wasn't just focused on putting larger amounts of beer out into distribution.
Yeah, and you could also talk to the customer a little more about the beer, being able to serve it, to them. I mean, a lot of the production breweries had that kind of system, like especially like Three Taverns and Creature Comforts. You know, you would go to the bar and the beer servers there would give you a beer and
Right.
we'll talk about it. But we would kind of wanted a more like intimate setting and approach to selling beer, or to communicating, you know, what we're making to our customers.
Yeah, because we wanted to make, you know, experiment a lot here, and then also like, you know, part of drinking a beer is also the setting, everything around it. So we definitely put a lot of attention in this area, the bar and the upstairs. So like,
Yeah. So you guys decided to start this brewery with, you know, kind of a I should say a twofold focus, but you also make IPAs on top of Belgian beers and lagers. You have beers for everyone who wants to, no matter what they want to drink. There's probably something here for them that they can find. You know, but you've also come up with a quirky style that's, you know, that's fun, creative, definitely smart, and a little bit weird. You know, talk to me about like, you know, formulating the idea for Halfway Crooks.
Yeah, so you know, it took us about a year to kind of get around to the branding aspect of. It took a year of like basically going through what we wanted to, how we wanted to say how we felt and how we wanted to say that. You know, originally we were kind of going to do a lot of mixed fermentation and blending here. That was kind of the original idea. And we love drinking lager, and we love the culture of Europe, and it's the kind of idea of, you know, when you get off work, you're in a space and you're talking over drinking a beer. You know, you're
Right.
basically talking to your neighbor, and there's a community that surrounds that, and you see the same people pretty much every day at the pub. So Joran and I really wanted to kind of to showcase that and bring, you know, that hopefully that kind of culture back here to Atlanta, and it was a lot of based off of Joran's kind of local pub, the Sporting Pigeon, or you can kind of say Sportif, yeah, where, you know, it's basically like Jupiler after Jupiler. There, it's like they're like, you know, less than about €2 or something, and they're
I
25 cents a liter.
Yeah, I think there's something romantic about drinking the same beer all night, and I think that's something like we wanted to like try to recreate here. It's like you can just sit at the bar, talk to who comes and sits next to you, and just have the same beer. Like there's, instead of like, I don't know, seeking out, oh, I gotta have this or that.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, we're also like not, I don't think we are like, oh, we're not gonna do that or not gonna do that. We're pretty open to everything, but wanna sort of give our spin to it.
It's such an interesting one because within craft beer, you know, the idea of exploration it's such a psychologically motivating factor for craft beer consumers, where the idea of trying new things and adventuring and, you know, experiencing all of the things, you know, that is a giant driver. It has been for, you know, 30 years in craft beer, that like, I want to try them all, you know, whether it's Beer Advocate or Rate Beer back in the early days, or Untapped in the more, you know, last decade. You know, there's always this like, you know, completionist ideal that seems to drive a lot, like, but that idea of adventure and exploration, of trying lots of things, you know, has been that major factor. And it is a interesting one to now look at craft beer trying to offer an alternative to that, you know, the other side of that, which is finding that thing that you love and just enjoying lots of that, but also building the space, you know, that's conducive to that. And you have built a really gorgeous, fun, shabby chicish, you know, like Belgian cafe meets, you know, industrial reuse kind of you know, tap room here, that feels a little different than the normal, you know, raw concrete and you know, pipe, you know, furniture kind of you know, industrial warehouse aesthetic that seems to drive so much of craft beer. But it's also fun and inviting with the color palette that you know, but at the same time very serious, and your service and the glassware, everything is pitched for that. Anyway, let's talk about brewing some beers, because that's what we're really here to talk about. Before we do that, supply chain challenges are here to stay for a while, so why not trust the experts to handle freight for your ingredients? Old Orchard has partnered with a leading logistics firm in the craft beverage industry to transport your craft concentrate blends. When you order 2 pails or more of concentrate from Old Orchard, You qualify for freight quotes from various carriers and can stay up to date on the status of your shipment. To get started on a freight quote for craft concentrates today, head on over to oldorchard.com/brewer. Also, packaging beer can be a daunting task, but buying cans shouldn't be. American Canning provides packaging supplies at competitive prices in order quantities catered to craft. Think single truckloads and half-height pallets rather than million can minimums. For a smooth packaging experience, also consider their ultra-compact single-operator canning machines. Pricing begins at $25,000 with quick 6 to 8 week lead times on most equipment. American Canning exists to help share your craft in cans. Learn more about their ecosystem of solutions at americancanning.com. I want to talk about Belgian Pale Ale, Sanguine, and whatnot, but we're going to push that off and talk about lager first. You all have a very wonky approach to lager. At times, 3 to 5 pilsners all on at the same time with all different approaches. Let's talk about the kind of formation, the foundation of that lager program, how you all have decided to approach it, and what some of the kind of key pillars are, and then how you start branching out from those things.
Yeah, we have like a lot of different German Pils brands, and I think that kind of gives us an outlet to kind of explore the different aroma hops and just the different hop variety that Germany and even Belgium and the Czech Republic have to offer. But the German Pils in particular.
That's true, because we also did have a recipe in the magazine for Pincha.
Yeah.
Your Belgian style Pilsner.
Yeah. So we use German. We feel German Pils as a great outlet for showcasing. Like it's almost like you go to a tap room sometimes and you see like 7 different IPAs. It's kind of like you come to this tap room and you see 7 different German Pils, sort of. And a lot of that time is like each German Pils has a specific reason for being there here. We get a lot of hops, a lot of different varieties from Germany, from 2 different farms, actually 3 different farms, and also the cooperative there. In the Hallertauer, and so we try to showcase those hops and play with them as much as we can.
I should also, for those that are going to parse our semantics, say German style pills, because obviously it's German style pills. Yeah. I find that people that try to hew too tightly to that, I mean, everyone brews West Coast IPA without calling it West Coast style, because calling it everything style is just a clunky, linguistic thing, and ultimately language is going to find efficiency no matter what in any kind of environment. So yes, people can be hardcore about that. It's German style. Just understand that we're going to shorten that to German
Pils. Yeah. I mean, all of our cans say German style Pils. Yeah. But yeah, it's kind of like it's kind of a modern take on that Pils. It's like an Americanized version of that, I believe. Right. But the Germans, especially like the likes of HVG and some of their kind of research and kind of the way they're driving some of their hop profiles, or their reason for having these hop profiles is to showcase these new aromatic varieties too, especially the ones that can withstand climate change and they go kind of beyond like the typical landrace varieties you see in Germany. So yeah, we like really heavily. A lot of our Pils we heavily hop in the whirlpool around like 100 to 300 grams per hectoliter, which is quite high. Compared to some of the more classic recipes you see.
What are there some fundamentals that span through those German style Pilsners that in terms of recipe construction? And and then what are the variables that you tend to hold consistent through, from recipe to process?
Yeah, so our base malt recipe remains rather consistent at 100% Pils. We don't usually use anything else like Munich or anything like that. We find that kind of detracts a little bit from the hop character that we're looking for.
Do you change the Pils malt depending on the beer?
Yes. So the Belgian Pils, we use Belgian malt.
We'll use Dingemans, which I think is one of the better maltsters in Europe. And then we have an American lager. We use Epiphany malt for that.
We use their modern Pils. They make they have really good malt at Epiphany. And they're based in Durham, North Carolina. And then for German pills, we use Bayerman.
And then our Czech style is Bohemian pills.
Yeah, and I think that's malted at Ferdinand in the Czech Republic, but it's sourced by Wireman.
Yeah.
They have like a relationship there. So that's pretty much all the malt we use here as far as base malt goes.
Sure,
And
sure.
For pills.
Yeah, but I think we must say, like, we are, with prices rising, we are definitely looking at different solutions, because it's, I think we saw prices rise again this week. That, should we source the malt from across the ocean, or should we maybe start looking more local? Anyway, it's a discussion we're having.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure that out.
Have you been exploring more domestic Pilsner malt alternatives?
We've explored two or three different craft maltsters here, and we've been happy with some of the results for sure. Yeah, they're making very, very high quality malt here, in America.
Are there other kind of process similarities then through the, are you like Eric from Cohesion, who you were just collabing with yesterday, decoction purists? Talk to me about, your kind of a standard lager brew.
Yeah, so we have a very small brewery. I would say it's around, 800 to 1,000 square feet.
It's tight back there.
Yeah, our equipment has limitations, obviously, due to our space. So we have like a 2-vessel. We actually have a direct fire system and single infusion. So, and Eric definitely uses multiple vessels to do his decoctions. And our malt, Eric uses a slightly under-modified malt that he's worked with Troubadour Malting to kind of design for his needs. And we use like pretty much very modified German malt. So all of our mashes are pretty much single infusion.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's much. Yeah, I guess you had to decoct yesterday if he's going to come do a collab with you, since that's his line. But
no, we actually did a single infusion yesterday.
Oh man, well, I guess there's an exception to every rule. Yeah. So no step mashing, no decoction.
We do sparge.
Okay.
We do that.
Our brew house really doesn't allow it. I think when we started looking to buy it, we were going to make a different array of beers.
Sure.
And not like maybe the next step is a more sophisticated system for sure. But for now, it works.
It makes good beer.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would hope. Yeah.
Are there, and I think, of course we've found in talking to folks about lager brewing that there are many ways to make these, and that for every hard and fast rule that somebody wants to make, there's somebody else who's figured out a way to make great beer without using that way of doing it. As you're brewing on a direct fire system with a single infusion, are there other processes that you employ in order to find that kind of, tightness, to the body of this beer and find that kind of delicate nuance to it?
It's a pretty simple brewing technique. I mean, we really pay attention to like the fundamentals, mash pH is extremely important. Water chemistry is extremely important to us. The amount of hops we use in order to get some of that like body that you're looking for, and like a 4.8% beer. So it's really sticking very close to some of those processes that we've put into place and doing it exactly the same pretty much every time as far as the base recipe or the base baseline of what we expect. So.
Does water then change for you in terms of which beer you are brewing, which style of Pilsner you're making? Yeah,
so we definitely change. Each beer has its own like kind of water profile for sure, like in accordance to what we want out of the beer.
Yeah. And do you build that idea based on just, what some of those historical styles are and water profiles and places, or do you tweak some of the elements in order to hit specific flavor and texture notes that you're looking for?
Yeah, I've never really, I don't think we've ever really brewed specifically to a place or like an historic profile. We're always brewing to a flavor profile and a perception profile.
Yeah. What are are there some common water tweaks that you make, or some some of those water modifications that you find yourself putting a nice fine point on some of your lagers?
Yeah, there's certain like for certain minerals we hit certain targets for sure on every single profile as a baseline, and then with for instance with like the mash, basically we're shooting for like a 5.4 pH in our mash in order to like kind of it helps a lot with getting rid of DMS in the boil. It helps a lot with kind of the alpha amylase and also beta amylase conversion of the malt. So we really stick to that. And then as far as the boil goes, we acidify down to below 5.2, especially later in the boil, since we're adding so much hops, so many hops in the whirlpool, in order to kind of smooth out the bitterness, so it's not as harsh. So those are some typical things that we do with pretty much every beer or every lager that we make. The water profile, we usually shoot for at least 50 parts per million of calcium, about I think 17 to 20 parts per million magnesium. Sulfate and chloride depend on what kind of beer we're looking at. So we tweak those kind of based on, do we want this beer to taste, do we want to accentuate the bitterness, or do we want it to be a little more full bodied? It's just basically how we want that beer to be perceived. Yeah.
Sure. Now, how's the water here in Atlanta? Do you have to?
It's very soft.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't have to strip it out. You just can build it up.
No. Yeah. We get a water report about quarterly, and then we adjust to that. But it's Atlanta water is very soft. We actually there's this thing that came out, I think, a couple of years before we opened, and it was like some article about how Atlanta water causes cancer, or something like that. Which this was before all the the stuff up in Flint, Michigan.
Yeah.
But we always thought it was we always put that on our cans, like brewed with Atlanta water, as like a funny kind of joke, But it's also very, very good water for brewing. Yeah. So we kind of like
you
that.
can build on it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk about hops then. You mentioned at the top that these you were trying to explore through these Pilsner variations some of these different expressions of hops that are European in nature, but you also have your sourcing, and you care deeply about finding really good hops from consistent producers and consistent farms. Talk to me about that approach, and then how you select those, and then how you think about building different beers out of these hops.
Yeah, we have a really good relationship with Florian Seitz at Seitz Farm, and we also source hops.
Just like all the hipsters do. Oh man,
yeah,
Seitz Farm. There you go.
And he's in Hallertau region, and I always butcher the name of the town, but it's like I think it's Wolnjak. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, we've been there pretty much every year. I think that 3 years straight, or except for the 2020,
right?
Of course. So we try to go there every year and see the farm and hang out and have a little bit of beer and hang out with the dogs. They have really beautiful dogs, and we also source
it's
from
like Yakima hop selection.
It's a beautiful,
It used to be like, can't wait to go to Yakima hop selection, and now it's like, I can't wait to go to German hop selection, or now New Zealand hop selection.
Yeah.
That's the FOMO amongst brewers about different hop selections.
Yeah.
Is the best.
I mean, it's just kind of like a really great trip to go also explore the Germany and its beer culture. We also source from a hop farm in Tettnang, the Vintel family, and then there's another one in the Elba Sal region where we get most of our saws. And then there's also the co-op that we source from. So it's a couple different places that we go to for hops, and we also we go on a group buy together with a couple other breweries in order to kind of help facilitate that. The shipping logistics can be quite a challenge.
Sure.
So we do that every year. We care deeply about the kind of the quality of those hops, because when we first opened, I think we were seeing a lot of variation with that, and it was something that was kind of always on the front of our minds. And Stan Hieronymus actually was here quite a bit early on before he moved to Colorado. He lived in Atlanta. And he put us in touch with Florian, and it's been a really great relationship ever since. And our beer has drastically improved due to those hops.
It is an interesting thing, because yesterday when I was talking with John Sherry over at Little Cottage, we had a Helles at the end there, and it was like, the first thing I thought, well, number one, it was very cloudy, and maybe a little too cloudy for me, like maybe Keller Helles, call it that. But the hop quality was fantastic, and it's interesting that you can just taste the quality of that hop. I was like, and that was my initial thought, and he's like, "Yeah, I got those hops from Halfway Crooks." Like, of course you did, But it's fascinating to me, of course. The more and more we get into this, it's such a key factor, especially in these beers, that because there's so much less there in them, that quality of the hop itself becomes such a defining factor in the quality of the beer. How do you evaluate quality in those hops? How, as you all are rubbing and smelling, like how do you start thinking about those and decide this is what I want and this is maybe not what I want? Do you work through kind of negative, positive selection? And some of it, especially with these farms, like it's not quite as, here's a whole shitload of brewers cuts, pick your own. Like, I mean, it's a little different, in terms of how much they grow and how much you have access to and how much there is to select from. But how do you, how do you go through that process with these hops?
Yeah, I think selection in Europe is a little different for us than it would be in like Yakima. So in Yakima, you go out and you have, you get to select about from 8 different lots of Mosaic,
sure,
right? Or Citra or insert.
There's lots of farms
you
can select from, exactly. Idaho, Washington, Oregon. There's 50,000 acres of hops there, and a lot of those, just the massive differences in those from where they come. And it's a little more. Yeah, if you're going to one farm in Germany, it's much narrower.
Yeah. I mean, it's like this is the hop this year.
Yeah,
it smells great. Or what? That's kind of the extent of the selection for us.
And I think, just like figuring out, like we have the good contacts with the farmers in Germany, and we just really rely on them for like giving us really good quality. But then it also, like, we really search them out and to get that good quality, because we know now that without good quality ingredients, we're not going to make great beer. So like, but then also like when the hops arrive, I think we smell them again, and then also like, get all the data from the hops and then use that to adjust our recipes. So like, I think there hasn't been a recipe here that we just copy pasted and brewed again. It's always like, a discussion of like, what can be better? What should we do different? Or like, hey, this is going to be a new crop year of hops. Like, how do we want to adjust like our late additions to that? And that's been a journey for us as well. So yeah,
in what way? What does that process look like then when the new crop year comes in? And I am fascinated by this, of course. Did the podcast with Eric Toft of Shunram, and he goes through a very long phase through process and then as he's phasing, brews single batches with all of these things in order to really truly understand all of these pieces, the wonkiest of the wonky, and absolutely brilliant, of course. But you're right. Every time these things change, all of these things shift. Every new year, produces new challenges, and then of course, even as those products sit over the course of the year, they also undergo small amounts of transformation as they go. How does, if you get a new crop year in, what does that process look like for you? Because you do have some of these brands that are somewhat consistent, where you have an expectation around them. Not that a consumer is going to be able to parse out the tiny differences that you all might, but you also want to make sure that those are hitting the same way for you all.
I think it's changing quite a bit due to the climate. So the last couple of years we've seen quite varying alpha acid content in some of these hops. So like for one instance, I think Blanc took a 5% swing one year.
Wow.
So that was pretty big for us. It's how do you get the same aromatic quality from that hop without the beer being overly bitter. So there's different techniques you have to use to kind of bring that quality out that you want. So every year we take the hops in, and we're trying to get smarter about this. So there's a lot of different oil contents in the hops, and HVG's been really great in helping us kind of. Or Johan at HVG specifically has been really great at helping us kind of think about this in a more analytical way. So you need data, right? You need to get the hops now analyzed,
right?
And so we because up until basically now we do it's mostly a sensory evaluation, right? So you really want every tool in your disposal to kind of get that consistency that you're looking for. So what we do now, or what we did before, was we would look at the alpha acid and then adjust our bittering regime based on that at the beginning of the boil. But it's always about starting at the whirlpool and working your way back. So that way. You get the bitter profile you're looking for, but you also get the aromatic profile you're looking for, and the flavor profile, obviously. So that's kind of how we approach that kind of issue or challenge, I guess. And HVG's been really helping with kind of understanding the science behind that, and basically hopping like lagers or. Hopping with these like kind of classic hops from Germany and new varieties through like oil content, basically. So like how many milligrams or micrograms per liter of certain hop oils are you kind of like shooting for? So we kind of see that especially with like American IPA producers. I think a lot of people really look at like hop content, like cohumulone ratios and all that stuff. So HVG is kind of pushing that same idea, I would say, and that's something we're trying to get more involved in. We do a collaboration with HVG, and I think it's the second year running this year, and we did one with them in VGF last year, because VGF also has some really great analytical program. Also, Tim Wallens was also in Final Gravity, and he's now a hop chemist at VGF. So it's great to have a friend over there that really knows their stuff and kind of helps us along with some of that research. Yeah.
Those collaborations have really, like, we've learned a lot from that. Like, we used to do like mash hopping, and like we walked away from that after talking to Johan.
And first word hopping.
Yeah. Why?
So Johan did some research and kind of showed that if you're not if you're not able to control the oxygen in your mash, some of those oxidative substances, if you do a first word hop, will carry through and make your product less stable. Basically, like, if you cannot control like like if you're not Sierra Nevada and you can purge your mash tun with whatever you purge it with, I think it's probably CO2, but could be something more inert, Who
knows?
So you can't really, you probably shouldn't first word hop if you care about oxidation.
Okay.
Because there's this like,
and those do carry through all the way into finished beer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So he has a paper on it. It's pretty good. I kind of when someone brings up first word hopping, I'll usually send that over, and it's a pretty compelling argument. And
I need to put that podcast together with him and then with the Omega folks to see like who's going to win on that. I guess it's all what you're hoping to get out of that, you know.
Yeah, I mean it's really great. He's doing really great. Or
do you want those thiols
from
that mash hopping, or do you want this lower oxidative property? You know, everything's a series of choices in brewing, right?
Yeah, I mean mash hopping I know Janus just done some research on mash hopping with IPAs in particular, and I think that there's actually some evidence of mash hopping with American IPAs that the hops absorb like some of the heavier metals, that kind of helps prevent oxidation down the line. So there's two different thoughts on mash hopping and first wort hopping. So
I think we talked about that on the podcast a couple months ago.
I mean I think like doing these collaborations with hop research or hop, co-ops and farms and people whose sole, purpose on this earth is to figure out everything they can about hops and their practical use, is really great for us, obviously, for Halfway Crooks, us and other breweries, because Johan does that with other breweries too, and it's really a cool thing. I think that they're going around and trying to trying to spread.
I want to talk about this kind of split and this focus on whirlpool hopping. Obviously, that's more of it's a bigger thing in America, in a lot of ways than it is, in strictly traditional European lagers. Before we do that, ABS Commercial is a full service brewery outfitter, proud to offer brew houses, tanks, and small parts to brewers across the country. They stock equipment ranging from 3 barrels to 90 barrels and offer custom designed equipment up to 900 barrels. Contact one of their brewery consultants today at sales@abs-commercial.com to discuss your brewery project. ABS Commercial, we are brewers. Also, you have a small brewery but have plans to grow it. You want a canning line but not sure if you should wait until you are bigger or start now. Several years ago, Twin Monkeys debuted the world's first production-level nano canner to help small breweries get into canning. Now, Twin Monkeys has created the Eagle, an expandable nano canner that can grow as your business grows. Find out more at www.twinmonkeys.net. Financing options are available. So let's talk about how you split up that hopping through the hot side, and push more into the whirlpool for aroma. And when we're talking about this, when we say whirlpool hopping, you think IPA and giant aromas. That's not your goal. Is not to just build gigantic aroma. It is to build aroma, but in a nice, subtle way that supports the overall, feel of this lager. But also at the same time, you're making beers for an American audience that are definitely conditioned and they come at it from a context of IPA where they, so the scale of this is different. The goal is not exactly the same, but you are also trying to capture some of that hop character and push some of that forward. Yeah,
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. It's I'm not sure I can add much to that.
How do you split things up then through that hop side in order to also still build the kind of supportive flavor that people want, that it's not just about some of the alpha acid piece. There is some of that kind of grassy, herbal, floral character from these hops that are so nice to get, that the boil definitely helps pull out in delicate ways.
Yeah, you kind of like that comes down to the oil content as well, especially, and also when in the boil you're gonna add those hops. I think like 40 minutes out is usually a good time. The 30 minutes out, especially with like hops that have a little bit more of that like that kind of floral note, like like a Herzbrucker or Perle or like a Mittelfrüh. We use those quite a bit in the kind of 30-minute range. We also use we kind of go full like Narcissus on our bittering. We usually and I think he kind of like later on in his life, he actually just passed away a couple weeks ago. He was kind of against this, but early on he was really pushing use Perle for bittering. And then I think we were talking to George Seitz, actually, who went to Weinstefan for brewing. He's Florian's brother. He was talking about how he saw a talk with Narcissus, and he was kind of upset that everybody was using Perle for bittering. But he was anyway. So we kind of do that. We always basically use Perle for bittering. It's a great hop for that. It's around like 7 to 9% alpha. It's got great oil content. We've used it for aroma. We've used it for flavor. It's a very versatile hop. and Sites grows that hop. We'll start there. We typically use in the whirlpool, we'll use pretty much every hop that we have. We have and that's what kind of changes the idea. Our German style pills, our different brands is kind of like which hop do we want to showcase aroma wise and flavor wise. Bittering is kind of set for us.
And I think, just the fact that we've made so many different varieties of the German pilsners or lagers is that we just kept trying and what if we try this, and some beers have been sometimes too much or too bitter we're lucky, or I guess we just keep trying it out, and then we have new beer styles.
Like an iterative evolutionary process that you've been going through for the last number of years.
Yeah.
And the things that really work are the ones that then stick around. And then, you make some explorations in other kinds of areas, but then, you find those things that become your consistent go-tos just through that process.
Or we'll become another brand or we noticed things that we did different, and then it's let's make that a different beer, and let's focus on that.
Yeah, we had four or five kind of consistent brands that we would rotate through in our first year or two, I guess, and we definitely changed those beers a lot. We tinkered with them quite a bit over that time period. Now they're pretty set, but the results of a lot of that are now other brands, and because we really loved all aspects of this. It was just we like that part of this beer, and actually we want that beer to be very focused on that. And then but we also like this other part, so now we want another brand to be focused just on that. So for example, we had we have a beer that we love, Sites Herzbrucker, so we brew a beer that is very forward on that. We love Saphir, so we brew a beer that's very, very Saphir forward. And those are two very, very widely different hops, and they're
to even
different.
To add to that, Active Low was from the beginning we brewed that with Ottenham.
Yeah,
and that was
American hop.
It was an American hop. Yeah. It was actually one of my favorite beers, and now it's all German. It's Saphir. And it's even better, I think. But so that's the evolution that we went through, just by I think we really want to care about the ingredients. That's why we went into Germany or Belgium and sourced them ourselves. And
Ottenham was pre-Sites, right? Or pre-sourcing from Germany, right?
Yeah. So it's an evolution, and then I think also want to add to that is that once we get the ingredients in, we really want to take care of them as well. All our hops are constantly frozen. We actually went that far to buy a reefer container, shipping container that is just keeping everything frozen.
We had about 10 chest freezers before that, and they started to get a little bit tight back there in the 1,000 square foot.
Yeah, but and then also the story with
and you find that storing at that frozen temperature, a 0 degree Fahrenheit type of temperature.
It's negative 10.
Yeah.
Also, if we open a bag, we'll vacuum seal it after again. We have a vacuum sealer in the back that. So just really trying to take care of everything. Minimizing. We know we don't have the high end system or this or that, but just taking care of our ingredients, I think is really important.
Yeah.
Same goes for yeast and.
Sure. We haven't talked about fermentation yet, so let's talk about cold side. For the lagers that you brew, what's that process look like? You've got, I see some horizontal tanks sitting back here behind the bar, but it looks like most of the fermentation happens in cylinder conicals back in the very, very small, tight brew house there. What does that lager fermentation look like for you?
The lager fermentations, they're pretty consistent across our German style pills and our Helles. Pretty much all of our lagers have sort of the same fermentation profile and cellaring, lagering. What we tend to do is we'll ferment around 9 degrees Celsius, we'll probably knock out around 7 degrees Celsius and let it free rise up to 9, and then we kind of hold that for, I think that lasts about a week or two, depending on the percentage of attenuation. And once it gets to around like 60 or 70% attenuation, we start to step it down like 1 degree Celsius a day. So we don't do a diacetyl rest. And then
No, why not?
well, we just don't need to. Yeah, with this kind of regime.
Yeah.
We also, I don't mind. We use like all the tools at our disposal. So we'll also use like ALDC to kind of help
Right.
make sure we keep our fermentation timeline, because it's a pretty small operation, and we really need to keep on our schedules.
I think we're about 10 days now.
Yeah.
Before it goes to the lager tank.
Yeah. So we'll
Everybody's using ALDC these days on their West Coast IPAs
Yeah.
and on their lagers.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's an enzyme, and it's
Sure,
a I think it's a fine product to use. I think a lot of people have some reservations about it, which is understandable. But I think it's a great tool to have in your disposal. So that also allows us to keep the beer really cold the whole time. So we basically we decrease it by 1 degree C a day until it gets to about 3 degrees Celsius. We also cap at this around 60-70% attenuation in order to kind of help reserve, keep some natural carbonation.
Yeah, absolutely.
All of our beers, we strive to have it naturally carved. So at that point, we
Is that just for the quality of that carbonation? Obviously, there's definitely cost savings, especially where CO2 is going these days.
I think all around it's a good practice. For all of those things.
I want to see more research into CO2 quality, because there is definitely
of course
something there.
Yeah. And the manufacturing of it. I'm not super super knowledgeable about exactly how they're doing it these days, but
I think we all have seen the nice tight bubbles that comes from natural carbonation and splending and whatnot. Yeah.
And I mean, we actually, now that I think about it, we used to do krausening. We haven't done it in a little bit, I think, because the amount of work and like just like the busyness of it all. But yeah, talking about carbonation when we krause, and the beer is fantastic.
Yeah.
The smaller bubbles. That is perfection.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I feel like it's a brighter beer too. There's just something that it's completely different. And there's certain beers that we always krausen, but it gets really tough sometimes to keep that to have that schedule line up, because we try to get we try to krausen with like a 4-day old beer that's at high krausen for us, 3 to 4 days, and the timings can be tough.
Right.
Let's try and work that in again.
Yeah, I mean, I from what I've read about Shawn, they're brewing Helles pretty much all the time, and that's kind of what they use to krausen. I wish one day that people would just drink 1 million barrels of metric a year, so we can just krausen all the time.
Sure.
But basically, at that point though, we send it over to the lager tank, and then keep it at 3 degrees Celsius for about 3 weeks. We tend to lager from 4 weeks, or we've done 4 to 6 weeks. Some beers we do 6 weeks, some beers we do 4 weeks. We drop it by 1 degree Celsius a day after that third week, down to 0 degrees for colloidal stability, and then we package. We go to a tertiary tank actually and package. So it helps get the beer a little more bright. And our DOs have been extremely good with those 3 transfers. So we have a pretty complex purging regimen, I guess. It took a while to get to that point, but
what's complex about it?
It's just a lot. Yeah.
We're saving CO2 on the fermentation, and we're blowing a ton of
Exactly.
CO2 in
Back to
other places. We're not
Exactly.
really saving anything.
Exactly. Yeah.
On net. Yeah.
Yeah. We're trying to, on the front end, we try to save a little bit. Yeah.
Sure.
And then
What yeast do you ferment with?
we use primarily 3470
Yeah.
from BSI, and then we have a Bach yeast that we use too, and then we have that's pretty. We used to have three lager yeast, and it was kind of a lot to keep up with. We're very, very particular on the yeast cell counts. I mean, every single pitch is counted and then and pitched by weight. We don't typically go from cone to cone. We try to treat our yeast very, very well. So when we harvest, we yeast wash or acid wash, and then we also give it like a pretty high concentrated ore charge in order to keep the viability high for however long we need to.
And we'll feed the yeast as well.
Yeah.
And then our 3470 will go up to 6 generations, and then we'll get a new pitch.
Yeah, or at that 6th generation, we'll start using that in IPAs. So we also ferment a pretty fair amount of our IPAs now with 3470.
Yeah.
That's something that we kind of got from after talking to Bob at
Highland Park.
Which makes total sense.
It does make sense,
and it's exactly what we want in our IPAs anyway. So why not do it? And so we get up to like 10 to 12 generations of 3470. So it's really economical, and it
makes total sense.
Yeah,
you're just farming more 3470 with your lagers to feed the IPA program.
Exactly.
Very smart. Yeah.
So
we don't have to call it cold IPA. It's just IPA.
Yeah. A lot of our IPAs don't have rice, and we have made what some would call a cold IPA, and it's definitely a take on Wayfinder's method.
Sure.
And we find it to be absolutely delicious.
Right.
I like it anyway.
Cool. It sounds like we pretty much covered the lager piece. I'm curious, as you're thinking about different German hops that you're using, since those become those differentiators, is the way that you, say articulate from a sensory perspective what some of the differences are between some of those hops and some of the, what would be characters that you're looking for and the reason for selecting some of those specific hops, because there are more hops in that universe than you do end up using consistently. What has driven some of the selections around the way that you've structured some of those, because of the specific things that those things provide, or say some of the contrast that those create amongst the various pilsners?
Yeah, we found the hops that we get from sourcing through Florian to be pretty consistent aromatically. The bitterness does change, but the aroma profile typically for us stays
year to year.
Yeah, quite the same. I mean, we usually don't have both of them right in front. They're not. It's not apples to apples, but we don't see any wide changes or like big changes. So like for instance, Hersbrucker, I really like Hersbrucker from sites. I get like kind of like a fennel quality from that hop, which I actually enjoy. Get a little bit of like lime zesty kind of poppiness from it. We tend to use a lot of Select here, Walter Select, that I find to be very floral. I get this like kind of cracker like kind of thing from it, which I really enjoy. I don't really know how to describe that. It's like
I'd say they're all very like subtle hops that how would I say that they don't like stand out, but they make the beer complete. It's not like any aggressive standouts. Like I would say the Blanc. I think I always am impressed with how like nice it smells in a beer. Yeah, it's hard to say. Sorry.
Sure.
But they make the beer whole.
You make me complete.
Yes.
You complete me.
Right. I'm just curious about this. Like, if you're going to have a slew of different pills on there has to be some differentiating factors, but each of them also has to feel compelling and purposeful, and not just, we're just doing this to do this. There's like, it wouldn't be worth the trouble if there wasn't a
reason.
Right. They both have to be differentiated so that when people drink them, they can experience some of that difference and they know what those things are. While at the same time, there should be a positive quality to that and not just a difference for the sake of difference. I'm just curious.
And then actually another thing that we need to add to our lagers is we have this hop back. We actually bought it from John at Little Cottage, but we started with HVG. We started getting fresh packs, so whole cone hops, and basically at the end of the boil, instead of doing
We'll do like a light
your
whirlpool.
full, your full whirlpool, will just run the wort over a hop bag full of, like, I think it's, what do we use, 10 kilograms in total
Yeah.
of hops, whole cone, that we have like broken up.
On a 12 hectoliter batch.
And the hops will sort of like filter the wort, so you'll get clear wort, but also like the aromatics of that is amazing. And that's also something that this year next year, we'll do more often.
We did like a whole cone Märzen this year for Oktoberfest, and it was very, very, it was well received. I really enjoyed it. It didn't last very long.
When you say break them up, are you grinding them? Are you chopping them?
Yeah, no, sorry. Like, but the fresh pack, they're vacuum packed, so they're very compact. So we need to break them up. So they're all.
You doing that in a low oxygen environment, or is it just atmosphere?
No,
atmosphere. Yeah, it goes straight into the hop back from the kettle.
Sort of a technique I saw at the Glazen Toren in Belgium. They do that to basically take the protein out of the wort.
Yeah.
Clarify it instead of whirlpooling, and I mean, the beers we've made so far are amazing.
Yeah, we've used a Mira in that. We've used this new hop from HVG. We've used Saphir. I think those are the two main ones we use. I mean, we do it with pretty much all of our Belgian pale ales now, with Belgian whole cone hops that we source. Yeah. Which we haven't even gotten into the Belgian hops yet. But
we're going to talk about Belgian beers here in a second. We're gonna let this one run, and just keep talking, because I mean, hey, we haven't even talked about our beer of the year, Sanguine, yet. I can't let you get away without talking about that. But from a sensory perspective, what is that? That whole cone hop back. What does that add to some of these? Because obviously you have a frame of reference, and having not done it that way, what do you think sensorially that adds?
I think it adds that like classic German like floral character. It kind of intensifies that, but also it gives you that kind of like, especially with the Saphir, you get this like kind of like tangerine, kind of very beautiful citrus, like subtle. All these things that we talk about. It almost sounds like we're talking about IPA. Like these are all very subtle. Like Joran was saying,
we're taking hops back for lager. Come on.
These are all very subtle things that happen, and they, like what Joran said, they all kind of they're all parts that complete this like whole kind of picture, right? This beer.
No beers have a lock on specific techniques, but I think that's also what you're saying. It's the beautiful thing about this, that all of these beers impact the way that other beers and styles are brewed, and we're using all, as you say, all the tools in the toolbox here, and that whether that's
except decoction.
Well,
that's for you, Eric.
No, but
it depends on how deep your toolbox is. Anyway, but it's fun to watch this happen at a global scale as the techniques, used in one impact another. East Coast, New England IPA impacts West Coast IPA. Hopping techniques change around that. And that East even gets into a dialogue with lager brewing now, and the way that people are looking at that. And and now you see even European lager brewers picking back up some of these and trying to we can do that too. And if there's something there that gives us what we want, then we can go there. There's we're all just making this up as we go along, but trying to use all those things in there.
Yeah, I was going to say you definitely smell the difference between a whole cone and a pellet beer, and I think it's I would call it the earthiness a little bit. Maybe a little more robust, but calling it robust is too much even, I think. But
how about wet hop lager? Gone there with your hop back yet?
No, we have not yet. We just don't feel we can get like
I think we live too far away.
Sure. Fair enough. Well, let's talk about Belgian style beers. Obviously it was a funny one because it's I think as Joe Stang and I talked about on our Best in Beer edition of the podcast, if we were to have guessed just objectively what Halfway Crooks beer would have ever made it into one of our beers of the year, it was probably not going to be a Belgian beer. It would probably be a lager beer, because that seems like the sensible thing to focus on. And yet through our Best in Beer tasting and through that blind tasting that Stan and Joe and several of us were involved in, it was that Sanguine Belgian Pale Ale. Talk to me about the kind of foundation of your program, and approach to brewing Belgian Belgian style beers. I mean, if you are Belgian, you can brew Belgian beers, right? I mean, you can just, I don't know, how do we have
Maybe it's all Belgian beer or all American beer.
Yeah, that too. Well, what's what are some of the fundamentals of that? Where do you find yourself brewing more often, and how do you because Belgian beer is such a broad category. As you mentioned, you were looking at mixed culture and that kind of thing initially, but it seems like the program itself has kind of gone in a different direction now.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sanguine was one of the first beer we probably ever released here. I mean, it's something that we felt we felt a deep passion to make, and it's really great to see it getting some recognition because it's a beer that I think we've tinkered with the most out of any other beer here at our brewery.
Yeah, I think it's a beer that is the furthest away of where we want it to be.
Really? All the time. It's like a never satisfied.
The furthest away.
Yeah.
So you're the least happy with that.
Exactly. Yeah.
What are you unhappy about, and what are you happy about with it?
I think the yeast character can definitely be toned down, and the hop
toned down.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's still too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the hop character can go up, but yeah, to go back to like how we approach our Belgian style beers is the same as our lagers. Is we want to make drinkable beer, and one thing we did is again ingredients. So we use Belgian malt, the Dingemans, but then we also started sourcing Belgian hops because we've seen that some of the breweries in Belgium that we both admire use Belgian hops. So we started buying from Forest Farm in Belgium, which we go and select as well.
Sure.
I mean, those are small farms, so like they don't. There's not much to select sometimes.
But it sure is fun to go.
Yes, and it's
Especially
always fun to see.
The pâtés are very good.
They take good care of us. And yeah, so again, like what Belgian style beer used to be, we use Belgian yeast, and that was it. We really try and get all the ingredients right. And I think since we started using the Forest Farm hops, it definitely like took the next step. And now, we're tinkering around with fermentation temperatures, schedules, yeast, and that makes it fun and exciting. But yeah, Sanguine, I like it, but we can do better.
Well, let's walk through the brew of Sanguine. Where do you start? In terms of recipe formulation on that.
I mean, there's definitely like examples that we have that we really like.
Yeah, like what?
Taras Bulba.
Sure.
Supernova.
Never heard of that one. Heard of that one.
Yeah, Supernova is absolutely amazing. That's from Verzette and Double X Bitter.
The forget the name, but I think the Rank also has a lower alcohol beer. I think they call it their pills Simplex. So yeah, lower like sub 5 alcohol, very drinkable, very hop forward, but very hop aroma forward, not bitter, and again trying to balance everything. So I think the first times we brewed it, the yeast really stood out, and we use T58 and then another yeast, but trying to make that work with the hops and the malt profile is key. So
what does the mash and that look like? What's the
single infusion?
Single infusion. I mean, I assumed that. So usually Dingemans malt, is it a single malt then, or?
No, we use
spelt, we use wheat from Dingemans, and then we use Dingemans Pils. We played around with that actually a lot. We've used Dingemans Pale and Pils malt with that, and I think we prefer the Pils. for that beer. The pale malt's amazing. And then it's a really simple. It's pretty much that simple. It's pilsner and wheat. We use like different hops from Forest Farm. We'll use. I think we've used everything from like Mittelfrüh to Belgian Cascade. They grow some Cascade there. That's absolutely phenomenal. They grow a lot of different.
They need a better name for it than Belgian Cascade.
Yeah. But yeah,
look at what it did for New Zealand. New Zealand when they just renamed all of these.
Yeah.
All of a sudden people want to brew with them. Yeah.
Yeah. Luke Lahash he's a good dude. And his son is.
I have to tell him that.
Yeah.
Fermentation. I think we ferment lower now, and then we also like do like a extended lagering time on the beer too, because it takes some time to clear out.
It's like a 10 degrees Celsius kind of hold for about 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And it helps kind of, I think it helps also with the yeast character quite a bit. We've been playing with the yeast. We blend different yeast for this beer. It's very difficult to.
Why blend yeast?
It's basically just to get like the character that we're looking for, right?
Yeah.
So we know that this yeast does this yeast does this, and this other yeast does that. So we try to like target certain fermentation profiles, and like as far as temperature goes, with these different yeast, and have them work together to create this thing that we're constantly searching for, which we haven't found yet.
So what does the T58 give you that you're looking for from this other yeast that you're being cagey about telling me about? Am I reading this correctly?
Well, no, it's more of like we're not sure it's the right one yet.
Oh, fair enough. You just don't want to send people in the wrong direction.
Exactly.
Oh, fair. Okay.
And it's been this like kind of experimental thing for us. Like it's like a journey, you know. So it's not really something that I think, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like we've made actually today. We'll release our double, triple, and quad, and that's all like the fermentis BE258 yeast
Or 6 or something like that.
Yeah. So yeah, it's constantly playing around with the yeast, and then the fermentation and the lagering schedules after.
So it's interesting to me that you're trying to find less yeast character out of this. I think, especially among American brewers, the idea of brewing Belgian and Belgian style beers is to amplify that yeast character, to build more characterful beers, make them a little bit louder. Talk to me a little bit about trying to like bring that back down or work within that flavor range, but also flavor and aromatic range, but also kind of bring it back down to a more calm, balanced, drinkable level.
Yeah, I mean that's what German beers with Belgian beers is balance. And I think when the Belgian style beers came out here, they were very, like you said, very loud with their yeast character, and I think that was wrong. Yeah, you don't see a lot of breweries making Belgian style beer anymore, and I think that loud yeast character is one of the reasons, I think. So that's what we're doing is trying to just to balance it, because it's you don't make Belgian beer by saying you use Belgian yeast.
Yeah. And I think the more, when you taste actual Belgian beers in Belgium, there's a refinement to it, and that yeast character is there. But yes, there's, it's maybe a little more controlled and a little more, I don't want to say boxed in, but if it's, there's a style and a class to it more than just this loud exuberance. It's not just shouting. It's got a specific. Generally, the brewers that are better at it, they find a tone to it, and they kind of hew close to that.
Yeah.
So for you, what is that perfect Belgian pale ale that you're still trying to achieve? And I mean, it's terrible that we named it a beer of the year when it's not really done yet. But there's no pressure to improve it now.
Yeah, I would say more balance of the yeast hop character mainly. Yeah,
and some cold conditioning, for 6 weeks in order to,
Yeah, we've seen that it takes a while to have the yeast settle out.
It goes through like a pretty pretty interesting process. I mean, there's like this like mercaptony thing that happens in the middle of all that stuff that I've noticed.
Yes, that is one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets weird, and then you kind of you patiently wait for that to go away, and it turns into this like kind of beautiful thing. I mean, the Sanguine is a beautiful beer. I think we both enjoy it a lot, and we enjoy the idea about it probably even more, right? So yeah, we're kind of working as hard as, or we're striving as hard as we can to perfect that beer, and all of our Belgian beers that we're making. So one thing that I think that's really interesting about what's been going on, our can design at the beginning of when we started was pretty simple. It was basically looked like a programmatic card, right? And our Belgian beers kind of followed that kind of idea. But as we kind of started looking at, Belgian beers don't, unfortunately sell as well as other beers, right?
Yeah.
So anymore. So we kind of looked at that a little bit, and we're trying to brand them a little differently now, and kind of bring in some of the older like kind of branding that Belgian beers kind of had and still do have, and some of that kind of whimsical, the whimsy that I kind of call it. That's just Joran, but it's kind of, but it's basically like there's like a look and feel for a lot of Belgian brands, and that's something we want to play homage to as well. So I'm really liking the way that that kind of that line is going as far as the look and feel too,
And there's a little bit of that even extends here to the tap room itself. A little bit of that, that patterned tile kind of classic Belgian cafe feel, but certainly within this other new context that you're in now too. If someone out there is brewing their own Belgian style pale ale, what would your biggest takeaways be for them?
Really control your yeast.
Yeah,
and then a lot of late hop additions.
Yeah.
And I really like how I think you can describe like our Belgian beers as more bitter than our German style pils. Honestly, like I think like Joran saying not too bitter, but there's like a high level of bitterness. I think you're kind of describing that.
Yeah.
That does exist in Belgian beer.
Mm-hmm.
So like especially with like some of Ginderachter stuff, Terrace Bulba, those are quite bitter beers when you like kind of set them apart.
But necessary. I think you're right in that sense of balance, trying to find a counterpoint in that bitterness to some of the fruitier estery elements that the yeast can produce, and that helps keep them, not that any of them are sweet per se, but when you have that fruity yeast ester, it does create a mental perception of it being maybe a little looser, a little sweeter, and so having that bitterness in the back, it gives it that kind of structure.
Yeah, I mean, but that being said, our bittering addition on our Belgian pale ales are quite larger than what our bittering addition would look like on our lagers, right? Our German style pils.
Even though they're similar ABV ranges.
Yeah, exactly. But the Whirlpool edition is still quite heavy.
Yeah. Well, let's pull back a little bit. We've been talking about brewing for a long time now, and but let's talk about Halfway Crooks. In the bigger picture. What do you all hope to achieve with this? You're a number of years in now on it, and you guys have made it through a pandemic. You've been iterating on these beers. You are continuing to push them forward. You're not always happy with where you are right now, and and the beer is a big focus for that. But what do you hope to achieve with Halfway Crooks, and where would you like to be 5 years from now? What's this ultimate idea of success for you all?
Yeah, I think when we started, the whole idea of like Halfway Crooks is, Joran grew up on a sheep farm. I was an engineer, and we wanted to kind of bring those two things together, which are two really different things, right? Sure. And that's kind of like why our branding's really kind of interesting. Is like it's kind of half computer stuff, half sheep farm stuff, and that's kind of where the name came from too, right? So it's like like a shepherd's crook. It's kind of like when we first started, we were going to do mixed fermentation and very technical lagers. So it was like we were halfway controlling something. So it's kind of like that's kind of how we always feel. Is there's really
hurting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's really like, it's kind of like, especially with the pandemic, I think it was about 6 months we were open when that started. It's more of like, I think what's this whole business of beer and owning a business has taught Joran and I is to be very like malleable and go with, you can't really like put your blinders on and just march in one direction. I think it really takes us a lot of patience and understanding, and especially, me and Joran are basically married, right? So we learned like a whole lot from, and our other partner, Tim, we learned a whole lot from each other and figuring out how we can be a better employer, make better beer. And I think a lot of what we work towards is having a very great environment for our staff and employees and just being a great place to work. And I think that's one of our main focuses in the next years to come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if you ask where we want to be 5 years from now, I think make a certain amount of beer, not too much, but enough that we can like support everybody, our staff or everybody around us, and really take care of employees, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great place to bring this to a close. G&D's micro-channel condensers are highly efficient in hotter regions and use a fraction of the refrigerant over traditional chillers, just like the G&D chiller right here at Halfway Crooks. ProBrew has the equipment, systems, and technology to take your brewery to the next level. Trust the experts at Old Orchard to handle freight for your ingredients. American Canning provides packaging supplies at competitive prices and order quantities catered to craft. ABS Commercial is a full-service brewery outfitter for brewers across the country. And Twin Monkeys Eagle expandable nano canner grows as your business grows. Of course, if you enjoy this podcast and the others, go to bainbrewing.com, click on that subscribe button. Let us know this content matters to you. Shawn and Joran, if people want to learn more about Halfway Crooks, where do they find more about you? Where do they find your beer? Where do they come experience this in real life?
We have a website. It's halfwaycrooks.beer.
It's one of the most unique websites in the world of craft breweries.
There's a lot of Easter eggs on there that you could try to find. And then
it is one of the nerdiest websites that I have seen from any brewery anywhere.
And then we have an Instagram run by pretty much AI. So if you
run by AI,
no, just kidding. It's helped out a lot.
Yeah.
And
that's great.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
You just have the AI write your beer descriptions for you.
It definitely helps. Yeah.
I would say stop by 60 Georgia Avenue in Atlanta.
We're 10 minutes from the airport and all major attractions.
The best experience.
Yeah. When I was coming out from the airport yesterday, it was right on the way. Strangely enough, like wherever you were going to go, you're going to drive right past here. So, yeah. Well, thank you guys for joining me on the podcast. It's been fun talking about lagers and Belgian beers, even if you were very cagey on the Belgian beer piece too. One day we're going to get more out about that and go deeper again. Well, but now we have a reason to come back once you've actually figured that beer out and are truly happy with it. But yeah, thanks for talking with me. Cheers.
Thanks.
This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.